All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? Get your ass on in here because I got Jim, Willie in the house. And you know it's going to be a very stimulating, interesting conversation. And if you don't know by now, you can go to his website, golden-jackass.com, and you can subscribe to his newsletter or consult calls or just donations. If you feel so inclined and you're able to, go ahead and give him a donation because Jim's been doing this a long, long time. And without further ado, let me go ahead and bring him in. Jimbo, how are you doing today, my friend?
I was really frosty last night, and I'm still a little frosty. There's a lot going on, and we're dealing right now, living in one of the most important transition times that we will ever see. Um, it's like a movement away from a fascist regime toward a republic. It's a movement away from the King dollar era, and it's a movement away from traditional finance. And they're all interwoven, and it's very complex what's going on. And if I said I had it all figured out, I'd be nothing more than a liar. But you and I, we're going to piece things together a bit today, and it's really intriguing. Um, I made some conclusions, Scott, a little over a month ago, like early November, really early November. When I finished the October report, the last few days of the month, then the new month of November came around. I made a conclusion that we're in a very delicate transition time. And the transition, I'm sorry, we just lost you. The transition is with the traditional finance moving toward digital finance. That's the transition. And the transition involves an integral role of Ripple and XRP. And I came to the conclusion, Scott, that, gold and silver aside, I still follow gold and silver, and it's downright exciting what's going
Oh,
on. We're about to bust through $60 in
mhm.
silver. Gold, gold is a different story, but let me just focus on this digital finance issue because something fascinating and intriguing is going on. I talked to a colleague of mine who's the most expert in crypto, and he's made a rather small fortune, now a mid-sized fortune, over a 10-year period. And he told me a year ago, Jim, it's time to move out of everything except Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. Those are going to be the three to focus on. We were talking, having iced tea, looking at a beautiful valley on his porch, and he said, Ripple and XRP, they got this wrapped up. You know that, don't you? I said, I'm pretty sure, yeah, but it has to play out. And he said, that's exactly it. It has to play out. Ripple is in a position to render obsolete the entire Wall Street crew of banks, and they won't let that happen. So there's going to be a sharing of power, a passing of power, and a struggle over power. And I said, yep, bring it on. I see it beginning right now because BlackRock is in the room, and BlackRock let it out in an indirect manner. They got a non-disclosure agreement. He said, I can't talk about that. Can't talk about an exchange traded fund. This was in a forum right before the Ripple Swell conference. And they jumped on him. They jumped on Larry Fink of BlackRock. Well, what do you mean you can't talk about exchange traded fund? Well, we can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. And they said, oh, you got a non-disclosure agreement. He said, yes, we do. I have to leave that alone. Okay, he did talk about it. He did. He mentioned it. He could have said, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea about anything. But he said, I can't talk about it. What's it? Non-disclosure agreement. What are they doing? Well, they're $11 trillion firm. They got something going. All right. So then I saw Garlinghouse with Jamie Dimon more than once or twice. And they're not arguing. They're not making scowls at each other. They're working together. And then Garlinghouse made a comment. This is I'm moving ahead in time, but it's the same theme. There's a big deal going on. Garlinghouse made some quotes at the Ripple Swell meeting. To start off, he said, let's face it, for the last couple of decades, the big banks have done a really shitty job providing services for their clients. And there was a ooh. And the Bloomberg interviewer went, they were frozen. Garlinghouse later said, we're not looking to take power from Wall Street. We're looking to share it. Then later, Garlinghouse, who's the CEO of Ripple, he said something else. He said, we're not looking to grab, we're not looking to make the big banks obsolete. We're looking to upgrade them. Okay, so here's the deal, and I think I might have mentioned it before. JP Morgan et al. And BlackRock, they want a couple billion coins. Maybe BlackRock wants 5 billion coins. And if they got 5 billion coins and the price goes to 200, they just made a cool $1 trillion. And the same goes for JP Morgan. Are not the big banks all insolvent with their bond holdings from 10 years of forced investment at 1-2%? A knucklehead zero interest rate policy. We got to bring down the cost of borrowing costs for the U.S. government debt. Well, yeah, but you're going to destroy the banks. They'll all become insolvent when you go back to normal. Well, we're going back to normal and they're all insolvent. 2 years ago, it was $840 billion in the hole. Now it's something like 450 billion in the hole. How do they get out of that? They invest in XRP and they take it up to a couple hundred, maybe $500 in the next year or two or 6 months. We don't know. Okay, Scott, something big is going on. So I think Ripple has told, let's just call it BlackRock, JP Morgan et al. We'll supply you with a lot of coins. We'll actually collude to make sure that it doesn't get above $2 while you're accumulating. But in return, we want a bank license and we want the global standard. We want the bridge transfer device for global transfers. And if you can't give us 100% monopoly, we want at least a 70% monopoly. And we want the bank license. We can't upgrade you to be something that we could be ourselves. Oh, another great point. So Ripple wants a bank license. And, they're going to revolutionize the banking industry. And already we got better connections between banks and exchanges, coin exchanges. JP Morgan announced they got now a slick connection through Plaid to Coinbase. And of course, they put on a little fee. I don't mind a little fee. I want a lot of service. So the deal is Ripple wants the global standard for transfers and they want a bank license and they will help JP Morgan and BlackRock load up in coins. And that's exactly what I think has been going on. There's a lot of complaining from the XRP army that this thing is stuck. We went, oh my gosh, we launched the exchange traded funds and it was 270, 250. Now it's $2 flat. What the heck's going on? Did they lie to us? No, they made a deal. So if you are patient and hang on, it could be another month. It could be another 2 months. Could be 2 weeks. Hang on. Because the reward, I think, is going to be historic, Scott. Historic. I think this is going to be like a Bitcoin ascension in months, not years. It went up 1,000-fold.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, they are wanting the government's wanting to absorb all the federal debt into the crypto market. And
Yeah, the stable coin, that is a huge issue. And that Russian deputy economic advisor got it exactly right. They're trying to bury, no, not bury, what's the word? They're trying to dilute the ocean of stable coins with US treasuries. You know, Scott, it's not just US treasuries. It's Japanese government debt, it's Euro bonds, it's UK gilts, it's sovereign debt
right.
from from the major nations. And you know, it's going to contaminate this stable coin. I call it an ocean of liquidity, but there's more in there. There's property titles
Well,
as collateral. There's a lot of different collateral in there. There's
well,
Ethereum as collateral.
well, this gets into the tokenization of everything, and then what is the running joke we got going on? What is the market value of planet Earth? You know,
I ask what's the market cap of the King dollar? But I also like Jake Claver's example. What's the market cap of email if you had to use a token to use it?
right?
Whoa! Boy, does that ever open people's eyes. Okay, it's a protocol, it's a service. And we just figure, well, I got Google, I got Hotmail, it's for free. It's not for free. There's money, there's infrastructure behind it, there's investment behind it, there's advertising revenue on Hotmail, on AOL, on Google.
Exactly.
There's a flow of funds that provides foundation. It's just
Right.
that you don't have to pay for it. But, some people, they, they do pay for it. I pay a small amount per month and I get a little extra service. um, this is very interesting. Now, the big $10 question is if you've got a billion, they hit $1 billion now with the collection of ETFs of XRP. They hit $1 billion. I think it's going to be somewhere around 200 to $300 million a week now for demand. So the big burning question is, where are these financial firms getting their XRP coins? Where are they getting supply? And I've got a pretty good answer. It's not definitive. It's just a pretty good answer. In other words, I have a really good idea how they're doing that, how it works. There's something called the OTC desk, over the counter desks, and there's something more nebulous called dark pools. But let me just make up a couple of examples. These are speculative examples, Scott. Let's say that DARPA and the US military have like 1 billion coins they bought for under 1 cent 8 years ago. They got 1 billion coins for 1 cent. So that's worth 1 billion coins, that's worth $10 million originally. But now it's worth $2 billion. So they got a huge gain on that. So DARPA might say, hey, we want to do something that's not exactly kosher, not exactly legal, but we want to work with Coinbase and Binance, and because those are the guys where most of the shady shit is going on. And we'd like some backdoor hacking opportunities. And BlackRock will supply you with 1 billion coins. We'll even give it to you for $1.70. What do you say? Will you help us with some back doors? Okay, that's a shady example. Here's a better example. Ripple has 3 executives, and they all have billions of coins. Maybe not 20, 30, but 1 or 2 billion in coins. And what price did they get them at? Well, they got them at creation value. They got it for nothing, but they've had it for 8 years. And originally it was for a fraction of a penny. So let's just say Ripple, Ripple Vice President, whatever, Martha, Michael or Martha, they say to JP Morgan, we'll give you 1 billion coins and we'll give it to you for $1.70 a discount. But here's what we want. We want a seat on certain conferences that you Wall Street guys are involved in that are secretive. We know they exist. We want a seat at the table. We want to be involved in some of the hidden policy. And where do they do that? Where do they sell them 1 billion coins? The dark pool, over the counter. No names, legitimate trades, but no names. Yesterday, I heard something for the first time. The SEC made a directive to Ripple and their executives. You need to stop the supply to financial firms off exchange unless you're going to report it all. Whoa. Okay. We're about ready to have rubber hit the road. It was a week ago that Jake Claver was pinned down. He's from the Digital Ascension Group, and he's become like 100% invested in XRP. And he's kind of like an anointed spokesman for Ripple. He was asked, when do you think they're going to be done supplying off the exchange? I call it behind the wall. When are they going to be done behind the wall, off exchange, OTC and dark pool? When are they going to be done loading up with these financial firms? When will they have enough? And he said, well, I don't know if they'll have enough, but I have a pretty good idea from some conversations and other information that I have that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, this is a week ago, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm estimating at 1.5 to 2 billion coins of XRP are available off market, off the exchange, OTC and dark pool. I call it off the wall. I mean, behind the wall, off market. So he said, I think a little before Christmas, they might be exhausted and have to go to the main exchanges to get their XRP to supply the background force for their exchange traded funds. And every few days there's a new one. I mean, we've got, oh gosh, we got EO Osprey. We got Canary Capital on a per capita basis, you know, considering their assets under management, the king is Canary Capital. XRPC is as in Canary. Franklin Templeton is in there now. They had a false reporting of what their symbol was, their ticker. It's XRPZ. That's Franklin Templeton. And they got $1.7 trillion under management. And they're advising, I think I read that they're advising 31,000 different financial firms. So then Vanguard, they came out, I think 2 days ago, and said, we're going to make XRP ETFs and other crypto ETFs available for our 51 million investors that include 401ks and IRAs, Vanguard. Then Schwab came out and said the same thing. I think they have 25 trillion under management. I think Vanguard did not go so far as to say they're going to do custodial wallet services. That's a big deal. Wouldn't it be nice if you just call up a broker and say, can you manage my entire wallet and keep it all secure? And when I want to go in and out, you take care of it for a fee. That's called custodial wallet services. All right, what I'm driving at here and, taking the scenic route is that sometime around Christmas, maybe 1 week before, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 weeks after, the big firms like Franklin Templeton, Bitwise, Canary Capital, they're going to have to go to the exchanges to get their supply, and there's not much there. And that's when I think it goes like slowly up to $3, and then boom, what happened? It's 9. It was 3 yesterday. It's 9 today. Well, they needed to bring in some more supply, and they couldn't find any. And 9 is not going to work. You and I probably agree on that. 9 is not going to work.
Uh-uh.
That'll move slowly up to 11, maybe not all that slowly, and then it'll just shut down and it's 23 and then 27, and that's not going to work very well. We got a bifurcation, Scott, that I find to be really, really interesting. And that is the price is going to be driven up by the firms that need to use it. It's going to be driven up by investors for sure. But the bigger moves are going to be the investment firms, the banking firms, the financial firms that need to use it. If they want to move like 1.2 million to a bank in Germany, Switzerland, Italy, or wherever, then they need to have a nice, easy way of having XRP facilitate what they call now, a very interesting phrase, consensual handshake, where no corresponding account, no intermediary escrow is needed because they trust XRP to make the handshake. Well, in order for that to work, and there's another keyword, friction. In order to have it work without much friction, you need to bring up the price. So you don't need very many coins to facilitate the movement of 1.2 million to that German bank. So it's how many coins do you need to make the $1.2 million transfer or to make the $65,000 transfer? Well, you got less friction, less resistance if it's worth more. These financial firms are going to do the work for us, Scott. They're going to make sure that it goes to a, 10, 20, 50, and 100. They're going to do the work for it. They're going to do the heavy lifting. They're going to say, we can't function unless next week we have a $25 price. We can't function. We
Well,
can't use it.
I've been going through the timeline on, especially just talking with Silver with Bob, and I call that the AI Bob. And so I've been telling, of course, we talked about it a couple weeks or a month or so ago. Silver be hitting $100 before the end of the year.
It
Well,
could.
it's already almost. If you're buying buffaloes right now, it was $62 for a buffalo just the other day.
Counting the premium.
Yes,
Yes.
and that's what's
The
dictating
premium includes the real price. That is
exactly
real price. The screw job, the fraud is when you sell.
right. So, with that being said, I started stretching it out and saying, okay, let's all scenarios hit and say it hits $100. How bad does this really trigger a lot of other levers that nobody's really thinking about? And the reason we got to $100 so easily is because December 26th, I believe it's December 26th, is the last Friday of the month. Yes, it is. And so that is the day when all the contracts are due. It's right after Christmas. There's not very many people there. There's low liquidity, all this other stuff. And so that makes it a real high chance that it'll be a liquidity squeeze. And the same thing, because we always hear
We
that,
saw it on Thanksgiving. We saw it on the Friday. There's your point. That's your
yes.
parallel.
Well,
Right, the Friday of Thanksgiving.
now then, look at the banks that they say every time silver goes up $1, the banks are losing $1 billion because they're shorting it out, and their shorts are getting hammered now.
Their
So,
shorts are about a billion coin, a billion ounces
okay.
collectively.
So as that keeps ratcheting up closer to 100, now the banks are their shit is squeezed tight. And wouldn't it be a perfect transition for them to be going into XRP to absorb a lot of that debt that they're going to start creating? I don't
Well,
know how that would work, but that's something I
there,
wanted to
there,
run it past you.
there are two things involved, as I understand it, and I admit my shortcomings. I'm learning, and my understanding is that there's going to be a liquidity squeeze. What does that mean? It's a commonly used liquidity squeeze, liquidity crisis. It means there's not enough buyers, and they don't want it to go to $85 in order to meet supply, to create supply. So you got a gap there. And the same could happen with treasury bonds coming out of, Japan. There are not enough buyers. So how do you make a buyer? Well, you lower the price and you move it up to 7%. That's how you make a buyer. That's how do you make supply with silver? Different with bonds and metal. How do you bring supply to the market to to enable the liquidity to flow? Well, you need a $70-$80 silver price. Okay, I have a joke, and I'm a mathematician. I say Fibonacci is in the room.
All right.
10, 20, 30, 50, 80.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what's after 50? Okay, we struggled at 50. We did not struggle at 40. We struggled at 30. We struggled at 20. We were stuck at 20 and change for 10 years.
Yeah.
We were stuck at $30 for 3 years.
Yeah.
We weren't stuck at 40 for more than days. We zipped right through it like a hot knife through butter.
But
Okay.
guess what? That cycle is speeding up even now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when it hits 100, it'll go to a 200 faster than 30 to 60.
Okay, but bear with me with Fibonacci in the room.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, if you want formulas for it, I got a formula. It includes the square root of 5. Okay, it's really cool. Really cool. It's using difference equations. It's not hard, but it's cool. Okay, the first problem is you got to bring in liquidity. You bring in liquidity by changing the price. And when you change the price, you wreck big banks. So they resist changing the price. But you must change the price or else the market goes into lockup. It freezes. So when you relieve the lockup, you raise the price of silver, and suddenly you've got a few big banks who are facing gigantic holes in their balance sheet. And how do they fill that? They can. One way is to buy a lot of buy a lot of XRP coins for $2 and then collaborate, and collude. Cooperate, collaborate, and collude to make it 20 bucks. Boom, tenfold gain. How much did they invest in XRP?
That's
Well,
why they're hammering the price on all these cryptos because they're backdoor loading up on this shit. And so
I,
that's the way that they can get their gains and wipe their debt out.
if JP Morgan holds, let's say, 2 billion coins of XRP and it goes to 100, they just made $200 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is more than what they are insolvent in their bond portfolio. Now, that is not a huge deal. I tell you, XRP is going to save their asses. And they don't want to admit it. And they don't want to reveal their plan. And they don't want to tell us that they're accumulating XRP left hand, right hand, front, right, center. They're draining the whales. They're cutting deals. I would love to know what are the deals that they're making. I just brought up a couple with DARPA looking for backdoors. Okay. And Ripple wanting a seat at the table for private meetings on policy. There's a lot of deals being made, and I am pretty darn sure that BlackRock and JP Morgan are willing to have the banking license given to Ripple.
Oh, yeah.
And that'll change a lot of things structurally. A lot of things will change. Okay, there's so many things that would change that I can't wrap my arms around it all. I've heard a dozen different things that will change. Like money market. What do you get now? 2% a year? My gosh, that is a big, big, big With the stable coins, they might offer that each month.
Yeah,
Okay, that's just one thing. Um, Loans. Well, now it's only a short list of financial firms that will offer a loan with Bitcoin as collateral. But I guarantee you, and I did something on my report for November. I called it the Ripple Campus, the Ripple Campus, and at the top is Ripple Bank Trust, right at the top. But then you got G Treasury for all the corporate bonds. You got Rails for making stable coins. Um, you've got Evernorth, which certainly looks like a venture capital firm under the shadow of Ripple. You've got SBI Holdings out of Japan, and that's not just a big financial firm. It's like a liaison for XRP and Ripple services for all the Japanese banks. Okay, you got this campus, and I know sooner or later there's going to be another element on my campus. I got about 8 items on it, and the EVM developers. That's another one. That's like a bridge for the Ethereum. I think it's Ethereum Virtual Machine. Is that correct? EVM?
I think so.
Okay. Well, that's a bridge for the developers. Okay, developers, come one, come all. Use our bridge, use our platform. Get your applications working on our Ripple ledger. Okay, sooner or later there's going to be an acquisition, and it's going to be a financial firm that does lending and takes Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. That's my guess. Those three as collateral. And what are they going to deliver for a loan? Well, you got to do, it's going to be something like 20% loan to value. It's standard. Pardon me, I itch when I talk and my nose vibrates. I'm sorry. It's nose hairs. So damn nose hairs. Um, you put up your XRP or Bitcoin to make a loan. And what do they give you? Well, they give you your favorite stable coin. Now, if it's within the Ripple campus, as I described, it'll be RLUSD that's delivered. And you can do whatever you got planned. You can buy your boat, or you can expand your business, or you could put your kid through a year of college. My gosh, I'm hearing some of the tuitions and they're blowing my socks off. Is it really true that at Boston University, it's 80,000 for tuition? When I was in graduate school at Carnegie Mellon, it was 5.
Wow.
And I got a fellowship after 1 year. So I was very lucky. I have great love and loyalty for my Carnegie Mellon. I still, well, it's been a few years, but I kept in touch for 20 years with my two favorite professors. They're close to retirement now, but they weren't much they weren't much older than I was. They were just 5, 7 years older than me when I was in graduate school.
Wow.
Okay, so there might be other opportunities to take a loan and tether, stablecoin, a tether, maybe Circle. And I don't know if we're going to get into this, but I'm expecting something bad to happen to tether, and I'm expecting it before the daffodils and the jonquils break ground next April.
Well, isn't it Tether that's bought is the one of the biggest private holders of gold now?
They're one of the biggest non-sovereign buyers.
Yes. So
Non-sovereign.
they were smart. They locked up a lot of their liquidity and assets, hard assets.
That could prevent them from getting destroyed, but
Hmm.
it's not going to prevent them from being harmed.
Well, the whole
I,
system
I
is
think,
probably about set up to be harmed.
well, let me give people an example of what I heard that they are doing. Let's just make up something. Let's say Qatar or Oman. They want to dump $10 billion of treasury bills. Okay. They don't want to hold them. They don't like what's going on with deficits. They don't like what's going on with the fraud in USAID. They don't like what's going on. They don't like what's going on with war and, Middle East, all that nasty crapola. So Oman wants to sell $10 billion. So they go to Dubai, where UAE is a broker, and has a backdoor connection with the Department of Treasury. And they say, we want to dump this $10 billion in treasuries, help us out. And UAE royals say, okay, fine. And they get it done, and they got to make a deal with the Department of Treasury. The Treasury, this is ugly. The Treasury prints $10 billion electronically, buys Bitcoin, backs that with a Tether expansion, and gives the 10 billion in Tether to Oman. So what's the basis of the redemption? Printed money converted to Tether through the Department of Treasury. That is a nightmare waiting to happen.
Well, that just devalues the dollar.
Well, yeah, but we've been doing that for decades.
I get that.
Okay, and I
But
think the Exchange Stabilization Fund is in the room there. That's involved, and I'd rather not talk about it because that's how Rob Kirby got murdered. Exchange Stabilization Fund, managed by the New York Fed. What are they doing? They're stabilizing the currency markets across the Western world. Right, right. Okay. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know how much they have. But I believe the Treasury Department prints money, buys Bitcoin. And the fact that Bitcoin is going down there might mean that Tether is on the edge of being in trouble. Or does it mean the BRICS aren't dumping Treasury bonds? Because the Treasury Department has apparently not been buying Bitcoin hand over fist in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Bitcoin's shitting a brick. Okay, something's going on. They're all interwoven. So Tether is interwoven with BRICS dumping of treasuries, U.S. government debt. And are they motivated to get rid of treasuries? Obviously. Okay, there are so many moving parts here. Then you got the Russian guy, the department, the undersecretary, deputy economic advisor. He said that he didn't mention Tether. He just mentioned stable coins. He said there's been a lot of usage of treasuries and other sovereign debt in the stable coin community. I call it the ocean of liquidity. And he said that it looks like the U.S. government has a plot to have stable coins downgraded as the U.S. Treasury debt is resolved in some manner. It's not going to work that way. It's just not going to be that smooth, and the ocean is not that big. I just read that RLUSD, the stable coin for Ripple, they're at $1.1 billion now. And that was a week ago. And it's going up every day. So who knows? Maybe it's close to 1.2 billion right now. Okay, it's growing every day, every week. And that's good because the users and investors in Ripple's RLUSD stablecoin are going to be, it's like a 90% guarantee they're going to be using XRP for trade, for transfer functions. They don't have to, but they're already in the Ripple campus. I tell you, if you imagine a campus, it really helps to visualize. You go from the campus from, oh, look at that. You can do brokerage with Rail. What do they call that? Ripple Prime now. You can do some venture capital with Evernorth. You could arrange for your corporate bonds to be tokenized with G Treasury, and you can all do this on the Ripple campus. Oh my gosh! You know what? They're going to make J.P. Morgan look like a schoolyard before long. And JP Morgan, I tell you, I do not like JP Morgan. I've had some bad experiences with them in the payment systems. They initiate an objection to a payment when my client did not ask them to do that. JP Morgan is not good people. And it's usually Chase, but I'd rather not talk much about that. I got a phrase. I know I'm bouncing around. So what? I say that BlackRock, JP Morgan et al., which means Wall Street, and Bank New York Mellon and Bank of America, they're big in this. Oh boy, are they big. I call them the useful giants because they've been calling us useful idiots. What's a useful idiot? Well, someone who votes for Biden and supports the sabotage of the US economy and the installation of cultural Marxism across our land. Those are your Democrat voters. They don't realize that they're supporting a three-way alliance of communists, narcos, and Satanists.
Mhm.
They don't realize that because they're not that bright. Okay, I've been told by, oh, this is so funny. 2 months ago, I had some people tell me, Jim, I really resonate with your comment about a lot of dumbass Americans. And I said, yep, unfortunately, I think 1 in 3 is pretty dumb and independent of their education. They could have a master's in finance. They could have a master's in in a language. They could have a statistics degree. They could have an engineering degree. It doesn't matter a twit. They might have voted for Biden. They might not have noticed that he was a dead man. I have some thievery going on. A couple people are pretending to be me, and I confronted one with the help of a client of mine. And this is funny. And just a quick aside, it was on Twitter X, and a client of mine said, "Jim, this is not you, is it?" I said, "No, that's not me. I don't post anything on a social network." So I said, "You mind doing me a favor? I want to ask this guy pretending to be Jim Willie. It's Jim Willie 1492, or I know that's Columbus. That's not. It's Jim Willie in 4 numbers, like 1492." I said, "Ask him, what was my thesis topic for the doctorate? Who was my first manager at Digital Equipment Corporation? Who was my manager at Staples? What journal was my thesis published in? Who was my favorite professor at Carnegie Mellon? 5 graduate courses." And I need to get back to that woman to find out how did this son of a bitch react. Because what I want to do is have these people convert to conversation about the issues of the day, financially and economically. They don't have to pretend to be me. They could just discuss topics that I write about and discuss on shows like this. That's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. But don't claim to be me and give financial advice and then bring out liability, for God's sake. Okay, there's a lot of really shitty behavior online. And I'm not talking about, you know, I'm going, I'm this is distinct from stealing people's coins. I have 3 stories that are heartbreaking. Um, One was from a lady in Chicago. She said she had all of her Bitcoin stolen. Some guy called her up, said, "You need to move it." That's it. They call you up and tell you you need to move it. Uh, Another guy told me he lost a bunch of XRP, and this was 2 years ago. It was worth 50 cents back then. He said, "I got a call. They told me I needed to move it." It's always the same story. And then it was in June. A really sweet lady who helped me a lot in understanding certain nasty forces. She said, "Jim, incredible. Um, an organization that I represent, they got a phone call telling us that we've been hacked and we needed to move." It's always the same. Phone call, you need to move it. It's not secure. Well, let me just point out one of the initial screw ups for these fraudsters. If it's not secure, how come it's still there?
Yeah.
How come you haven't stolen it yet? So how do you undo this? Okay, could you please tell me what is your office What is the name of your office? What's your function? What is your manager's name? Where are you located? And give me a phone number because I want my attorney to call your manager. They hang up and that's it. I've had 2 clients tell me that they've done that and that's the end of it. That's the end of it. Gone, done. There's going to be a lot of crappy, nasty, devious behavior. And I got to say, Coinbase is mentioned more often than any other. I'm not going to say they're corrupt. I'm just going to say they're mentioned during a nasty event more than any other. I'm told that they've got the worst quality custody.
They've had some holes in their whole platform for a while, especially like 3 or 4 years ago when they were having password problems. I know I had an account with them. I didn't have much crypto with them though or anything, so it wasn't like sweating bullets. But man, I tell you what, if I'd have had a shitload of coins there, I'd have been like, this is not cool, man. Y'all got holes in your platform like this just on,
And they're
security.
the biggest, the
Yeah.
biggest. And
Well, they're
I
the
heard,
biggest in America. Binance is
yeah,
another one that's over there. It's the original King Daddy.
yeah, I heard that they got a lot of problems, a lot of,
They got
it's
holes too.
okay. I'd rather not talk about fraud anymore. You got to be careful, ask questions and tell them that your attorney will call back what's the manager's name. And that'll be the end of it. It won't happen. It won't go any further. Okay. I want to know from Garlinghouse and the chief tech officer, David Schwartz. I want to know, and I can't remember the name. It's a woman who's the president. I can't remember her name of Ripple. I want to know, what are the deals? What can you tell us about your deals? Even loosely described, like we expect that we're going to get our license. We've got some assurances. Okay, stuff like that. Um, we expect that there will be some organized manner of releasing escrow, and we will enable that the exchanges have a higher price. In other words, they're not going to dump coins on the market to prevent a move to 20 and 30. Okay, this is where we're going. 10, 20, 30, bang, bang, bang. I don't know how fast it's going to happen, but I just saw a very interesting um, Jake Claver um, interview, and he's being pressured because he's on record as saying that before the end of the year we're going to be way over $100. So he's being pressured. What do you know that you're not saying? And his message is really quite simple. I think it is not wise to mention timing. Do you remember 1990 with General Schwarzkopf, U.S. military, Kuwait,
Yeah.
Schwarzkopf?
Uh-huh.
Event schedule. We're not dealing with a calendar here, folks, in the press. We're dealing with an event schedule. Here are the 5 events for liberating Kuwait. Events. Okay, we're going to have some events like BlackRock and JP Morgan cannot be supplied any further from behind the wall with OTC and dark pools. They've run out. There'll be an event that Ripple gets its license. There'll be an event that Bank New York Mellon makes progress in tokenizing their first $1 trillion in assets. That's a big move. NASDAQ does the same. They tokenize their first trillion in assets, starting with the FANG mats. How ironic would that be? FANG mat, all that dirty money coming from Langley, and they're going to help lift the XRP price. Okay, events. Okay, I don't know for sure, Scott. Maybe you could help me with this. Do the BRICS nation have a parallel XRP, or is it the same XRP?
Far as I know, it's the same.
I heard that they have plans for separate management, separate rules, separate procedure and protocol. And if the United States doesn't get their act together, they're going to go their parallel path.
I haven't heard anything like that. I
Okay.
I think it's just they're going to just use the same rails, and all these banks overseas are already accepting XRP. That's already on the books. So it's just a matter of restrictions being lifted over there for Russia and China, and they're already lifting restrictions on crypto now. They just came out over the weekend saying they're lifting restrictions. And I think one of the big triggers could be silver. If it keeps pegging, it's not if, it's just when it hits $100. I think it's going to really shock the system too, because now it's looking like it could be $500 by March. And if that's the case, it would really motivate the banks to want to get out of all these short positions and get into more XRP.
Well, get into positions that offset their huge losses.
That's right.
Get into something that has some
They're
really big
leveraging it.
upside.
The leverage it.
Leverage their XRP. I tell you, we're going to have some useful giants here. Would it be amazing if JPM and BlackRock each enable a $100 price by next spring and summer?
It could be by the end of the year.
I know, Scott. I'm aware of that, and I have just a general rule when I open my mouth.
All right.
Uh, this is not meant as criticism. It meant as my being cautious.
Sure.
I think it's possible what you say. It could happen next week. We could see $25 next week when Franklin Templeton announces that they need to buy another 200 million coins from the exchanges, and it's not there. So
Mhm.
they need the individuals to free up. They need the whales to free up. Okay. There was a poll that I saw and read about. It said that 74% of XRP holders have no intention to sell below a couple hundred or 400 or $500. No
Right.
intention.
Right.
They'll borrow against it as collateral. And I think you and I belong in that camp.
Yeah.
Um, okay, you mentioned silver now about 3 or 4 times as providing the crisis,
Hmm.
but we need to talk about something that has already begun now as a lit fuse for a crisis, and that's the reversal of the Japanese carry trade, the
Oh
yen
yeah.
carry trade.
Okay.
They're raising rates, and their bonds are now being abandoned. Their 30-year bond is the highest it's been in 30 years. 2 weeks ago, it was the highest it's been in 30 years. It's getting worse by the week. Um, I don't want to get into a long discussion, but let me just say that for several years, maybe 15, 20 years almost, the Japanese had a near 0% interest rate. So Wall Street borrowed trillions of dollars and invested in treasuries. They borrowed at zero. They invested at 6, 8, 10%. Let's just call it 6%. Their risk was if the yen went up or their interest rate went up. And 2 years ago, the yen went down 20% when they sold a lot of treasury bonds. And this is a very confusing issue. The Bank of Japan sold $180 billion of treasury bonds, and their yen went down because their dollar reserve behind their yen was depleted. And that's the best explanation I can give. And I don't want to go into it more, but look at it. Look at the chart. The yen went down 20% in a year period when they sold 180 billion in treasury bonds. It caused a nightmare, a sequence of events. Foreigners dumped the Japanese government debt because they suddenly lost 20% on it from currency translation. The government decided we need to fix this. Let's print money to buy it back. So they printed money and the yen went down more because they printed money. They couldn't get out of it. Then they announced they're going to go to a gold standard for their financial industry, and they faced assassinations from the Rockefellers. Okay, this is a nightmare for the Japanese. And now they're raising interest rates. And the bond market is pushing it worse than the rate hikes that they are officially instituting. And Wall Street, with their financial firms, are lying through their teeth, saying there's only 100 to 200 billion dollars worth of treasuries involved in the yen carry trade. Well, I learned in the 90s that it was more like 5 to 7 trillion. I studied this in the 1990s. My Barron's was a real educational journal. Barron's, far better than the Wall Street Journal. So I read another article from somebody who had a lot of information about the yen carry trade, and the authors thought it was between $2 and $4 trillion. Borrow yen, buy treasuries, make a big profit, put on leverage, amplify it 20-fold. We're talking about multiple trillions of dollars in profit. Well, now it's all gone in reverse. If Wall Street didn't take the clue for the discount on the yen 2 years ago, they will now. So, okay, you talk about silver. I say what's going to come next is a massive dumping of treasury bonds, a liquidity problem. And Jay Claver integrates that into what he calls the XRP domino theory. Okay, here's where the gap gets filled. There's a monstrous volume of treasuries that get dumped. And the US government is going to do their dead level best to abuse Bitcoin and Tether to relieve the strain. They're going to do their dead level best to use the ESF to soak it up, maybe with leverage, but it's going to be too big. It's going to cause a liquidity crisis, which means there's an absence of buyers who bring money to the table to provide that liquidity. Absence of buyers. In some cases, absence of supply. Absence of liquidity. The money's not going to flow. And there will be problems because the big financial firms won't be able to handle it. And Jay Claver reasons that XRP could come to the rescue, move it up to $200 in value, and there's a lot of liquidity in there to serve as a bridge between the dumper and the buyer, the seller and the buyer. There's not enough liquidity. Well, provide the liquidity with a flow of XRP in intermediary functions. And I don't have it all figured out. I don't. But I did post in the September report what the XRP domino theory would look like. And what is at the end of the paragraph? $200 XRP price. This is going to sound a little nefarious. I don't like that word. We reserve that for the cabal. It's going to sound a little bit devious. We need some crises for XRP to show what it can do in resolving the left hand and the right hand with an absence of liquidity to complete the handshake. This is going to be really exciting. We need a crisis. The Japan yen carry trade reversal is one. The rising silver price, we could see $100 by January. This could get out of control. Remember, Fibonacci's in the room. 10, 20, 30, 50, 80. 80 is the next mark. I think we're going to go to 80 without much resistance. It's amazing that when there is no past track record, no past chart history, that Fibonacci seems to be involved, and that's integrated with the Elliott wave. I don't want to have too many weird concepts here, but in uncharted territory, there seems to be a pattern. And I found it fascinating that, and I said this before, we're going to have a beeline to 50, and we're going to have a lot of resistance at 50. And we did. We had 2 months. We had
Now
nothing
the
at 40. Nothing. Go ahead.
now we're my little chat with Bob is 65 is a psychological barrier that once it crosses 65, because they've seen it at 50, back in the 80s, and it's got up to 60 now. Oh, it's impressive, but 65, that's when all the breakers flip. And they say that's a green light to start moving into silver hard. So 65 psychological barrier.
All right, let me put some flesh on those bones. Um, if you look back to 2012, you'll see some activity at $30.
Hmm.
I call it a cup of coffee. It didn't last for more than about a week. Maybe it was only 3 days. Not enough activity to mean anything. So what we're dealing with is psychological points, not trading points, where someone will say, well, finally we got back to where I bought it. I'm going to dump it now. I waited 8 years for that. Okay, that's the effect. We didn't have that at 50. We had no past history at 50. So it's psychological. What I believe is happening at 65 is that's where the margin calls get way out of control. And that's where bank financial firm accounts go over the red line. And that's where the fraud for looking the other way all these years, that stops. And that's when the big financial losses come. And what we're likely to hear is stuff like this. ABC firm and XYZ firm, which are hedge funds in Wall Street, they just had a $1.8 billion hole in their balance sheet. Then the question is, under whose roof do they operate? JP Morgan, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. We're going to hear about the little names, and it's going to take days and if possibly weeks to find out where do they operate? Where's their license? Cayman? Bermuda? And this is where we're going. There are going to be some big losses, and you won't know with which financial firm they're associated. And it'll come out later. Okay, regarding FTX and Sam Bankman Fried, whatever,
Yeah.
did we ever find out which big financial firms he was associated with?
Mm-mm.
They did a great job on that. And I'm not sure, but I don't think he's in prison.
I thought he was supposed to be hanging out with Diddy or somewhere in the prison cell up there by him or with him or something. Who the hell knows?
Joined at the hip?
Yeah, well, they're bunkmates now.
Oh my God. I heard the same rumor, but I've heard no follow-up, so I don't really know.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I don't have
okay,
firsthand knowledge.
what we have we have to speculate as to what the crisis is going to be.
Absolutely.
And it could be a BRICS embargo on the US for trade. And they will say, we don't want your treasury bills. We don't like your debt. We don't like your attitude. We don't like your funding of war. The only way we'll accept a trade payment at the LA port, at the New Orleans port, at the Savannah port, at the Virginia port, at the Baltimore port, at the Portland, Maine port is with XRP.
Huh.
This is where we're heading. So, crisis management, crisis speculation. What is it going to be? Scotty, I'll just say it might be three of them at once.
Oh yeah, get a trifecta.
If there's a silver panic and crisis, I don't think it'll be alone. Okay, it's kind of like this. You see, the enemy camp is attacked on the right flank, and all of a sudden somebody attacks on the opposite flank.
Mm-hmm.
The beast is wounded, and they just come out from the hills and attack the beast. Who is the beast? Let's not go there. I'd rather not go there. I've gotten enough bad attention in the last several months. Um, you can guess what I'm looking for here, Scott, and I'm finding.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Let me just say that I have not pivoted in any way. Um, I do spend more time with XRP and the research because it's happening and it's new and it's exciting and the upside is huge. Okay, you might see a 20-30% move in silver, but you might see a 20 or 30 fold move, 20-30x.
All right.
Okay, that's 40 to 60 for XRP. That is not an outrageous expectation at all. Uh, I've focused sharply on the event on Friday, Thanksgiving Friday. I focused sharply on that. Um, there was a $24 billion loan provided by the Fed to a group of financial firms. Does that mean there's a $24 billion hole from the rise in silver to the mid 50s? Yes, it does. Exactly. So they patched it. Did we have an announcement that XYZ firm or ABC firm, the hedge funds, had a huge $1.8 billion hole? No, no, they patched it. Okay, if we have a change of the guard at the Fed and Powell's out, will they continue to patch? These are tough questions. These are exciting times. Silver is now being called unobtainium. The US Mint has no more coins. Um, I believe from evidence that I've seen personally that Miles Franklin is having a very difficult time filling orders. Let me just say that. Um,
The random eagles, they you can't get them no more. Buffaloes and assorted other coins, you can still get them right now, and they're in stock. But the it'll just be interesting to see how fast that supply dries up.
where are you seeing that supply?
Well, because I go onto the exchange and I can check the exchange to see, like, I could type in a whole, shitload of coins on something to see how much supply they have or anything like that. So I can kind of check. And then just if it's in stock, they're the random Eagles there for a while were 35 days out. And now you just can't get them at all. So they sold out. The little 10-ounce bars that I had custom made, Trump bars, they sold out a couple months ago. They're not making anything right now because they're focusing all on the buffaloes in the bullion. They used to not have 1-ounce bars. I'll put it to you like this. They used to never have 1-ounce bars in silver. Now they have 1-ounce random bars in silver because they're making the bars. Normally, the 10-ounce bar was the smallest you could get. Now they're making 1-ounce bars.
Well, let me put some color behind this issue. I've mentioned this almost every month when we talk. Mexico has made silver a national security metal.
Yeah.
There are, let's just say, obstructing, not completely blocking, but obstructing some of the silver exports. China has a complete lockdown. They're not exporting any silver. They're buying. They're buying from fools who are willing to sell it to them.
All right.
Um, this is going to turn into cartel issues where a small group of nations get together and say, we will trade among ourselves, but we're not trading outside the cartel. Now, when we talk about cartel, we think of OPEC and the oil cartel. They traded, they sold oil outside the cartel, but they fixed the price. They dictated the price.
All right.
And we saw it vary based on conversations and just, meeting, what do you call it? Minutes from the meeting. Um, this silver cartel is going to be a different animal altogether. It's going to be, screw you. We're not supplying you any silver because we don't like you as a nation. That's what's coming. It's going to be international silver warfare. It's going to be India looking for silver for their solar farms. I did a chapter on solar farms. I think it was April, might have been March. I don't know exactly what the months are. I just know that it was a while ago. It was this year. And I noticed, oh my gosh, look at that. We got a few solar farms in California, a few in Nevada, one in Arizona. Australia has a couple, and India has a bunch. So I looked at India a little more closely. I highlighted one. 300 sunny days per year on average, and the average temperature is over 100 daily. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Northwest region of India. It's so hot there that they have, deserts and not much for the population, and they got monster solar farms. Now, I wonder, in 5 years, 7 years, will will they not be as effective for producing electricity? Will they need an upgrade? Okay, I don't have the answers to these, but some expert friends of mine say, Jim, these are limited lifespans.
Yeah.
He said it's not just that the sun bakes the panel and alters it physically. It's new technology comes on that's 20% more efficient.
Right.
So that they're having, just like with, photolithography for chip manufacturing. Okay, by the way, they're hitting limits now. They're hitting they're hitting nanometer limits for chip production. This is very interesting to follow. What it means is that AI can grow and increase in its capacity, but there are limits. Uh, You're not going to get the 20% improvement every year for whatever, because they're reaching the limits of nanometers. If you get down to two, if you get down to too few nanometers, you're dealing with just several atoms and molecules. You can't get less than an atom or molecule. They're limits. That's what I call the nanometer limit. This is all very exciting, and I am jazzed for silver investing. Um, okay, most people say, but Jim, you got to make a forecast. All right, we've dealt with 50. We're done with 50 as
Yeah.
an obstacle. It's now a floor.
Yes.
We're now looking, what is next? You're pointing out some structural significance of 65. I respect that. I'm saying it's 80. I say we have a pause at 65 and we're going to go to 80. And if you'd ask me how long, it's really a mystery. It depends on a number of different factors. They're trigger events.
I think
Maybe,
65 is a trigger.
pardon me.
I think 65 is a trigger.
Well, no, I'm talking about external triggers, like the Japanese government bond has a big problem, or the Japanese raise interest rates, or OPEC decides that they're not happy with the oil price, so they jack it up $10, um, or just some war in a place we don't expect. Um, I'm tired of war. I'm really tired of war.
Yeah.
I called it endless war.
Yeah.
And there's actually a term for it in economics. They call it forever war.
Yeah.
Um, It's the same thing, endless
Yeah.
war. Um, and we're told a lot of real bullshit. We're told that the reconstruction is great for the economy. No, it's not. The destruction is far worse than the reconstruction. And unfortunately, at least a third of reconstruction funds are stolen. So they do war to do the reconstruction funds and then they steal them, like the Iraqi Reconstruction Fund. Henry Kissinger was involved in the theft of that. Don't believe them. Destruction is never constructive. Let me repeat that. Let it sink in because it just doesn't sound right. Destruction is never constructive. Expanding business and product lines, that's constructive. The trickle down, I'll give you a trickle down that I found really interesting. in central Russia, they made agricultural cities, agri farms. They made little cities. They made housing for the workers. They had repair sites for tractors and farm machinery. They had, food distribution, supermarkets. They had shoes, clothing, overalls. That's your trickle down. It creates businesses, trickles down, all the supporting industries. Boots, shoes, clothes, go-karts, not go-karts, golf carts. I mean, they didn't need cars. They just need something to go, 500 yards down the way, get there quickly. They use golf carts in the underground tunnels. Okay. Right now, there's a manpower shortage in the Russian central region agri farms because they're at war. I did a consult call, I think it was about 2 years ago, and there was a guy in the Gulf region. Oh, it was the guy from Oman. And he said, Jim, I know a couple Russians. I said, are they working in the oil industry? He said, no, no, they escaped the draft. They're not all workers. They're having a good time. They're wealthy and they moved. They avoided the draft. I said, are they under 30 years old? He said, yeah, I think so. They're about that, 28, 30. So what are they doing? He said, I don't know, but I see them around. They say hi. I said, they look like they're working. And he said, really don't know. Maybe they're trading, he said. Maybe they're trading Bitcoin. I tell you, the Bitcoin maxis,
Yeah.
they're an interesting crowd. And let me just say, you guys are missing something extraordinarily large. It's called intellectual property and real case usage under contract. Usage, intellectual property. And any Bitcoin maxi who tells me that intellectual property is not something to be concerned about, you're missing something up in this part of your body. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, the Bitcoin maxis versus the XRP army versus everybody else in crypto.
I do think we're going to see a lot of destroyed little cryptos, little ones. And I don't think they're going to have much in the way of IP, intellectual property. This is going to be a survival exercise of like 10 to 20 coins. That's my impression. And you probably are more expert in that evaluation than I am,
I
but
was
we hear them.
there's a top 100 at least that are gonna make it, and they'll
100.
yeah at least it's
Uh,
yeah
I think it's
there's
going to be less than that, but that's okay. We're
well
going to
that's
have to
okay
what?
we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't know as much as you do about who they are and what their function is and what their intellectual property might be. But unless they have IP, they're going to go by the wayside. They're going to be just kicked to the curb and go down to near zero. Um, I have what I call a hydraulics theory. We got XRP, XLM, Cardano. um, what's the other major? Solana,
Solana.
um, um, H bar.
Yeah.
Those I think are going to be the new kings.
Well, a lot of people are not taking in consideration, like Coinbase is coming out with its own rails. It is called Base. And a lot of these coins now, their whole problem is or was they couldn't cross platform. And now that they're creating the rails to do cross platform, so you could take one coin and go over like a Solana coin and go over into an ETH coin to go over into a base coin, to cross over with XRP or Doge or Bitcoin,
Yeah,
so those those
that's
abilities now those are to cross platform is going to be huge in the whole crypto scene. So,
it's
and
going
a
to
lot of people
enable a lot of new usage.
absolutely. And just think of look at already how the government, is they just pegged XLM as one of their rails now. And so the government is picking all these different coins. Trump just went and backed up crypto.com, which has its own coin, Crow. Well, Crow is the backbone for several other coins in the whole Crow network. So all these networks are, it's kind of like they're able to put a little bit of money in different silos. And so if one silo was to go bankrupt or something happened, um, oh, what was a good word for it? Anyway, where it got exposed, these other silos would be independent. And so therefore it's kind of like having multiple wallets where if one wallet
Compromised.
got hacked, your other wallets are still fine and your funds are safe. So that's another by dividing it up into all these different cryptos and all these different protocols. XLM is going to be a huge player, and the government made sure with that. Trump made sure Crow is going to be a huge player. They put $1 billion into that whole program about 3 months ago. What happened? Crow went through the floor. It's like, what the fuck, man? This shit was 30 cents a minute ago. Now it's 10 cents. But they are loading that shit up in the on the back doors. And this is what we're not able to see because they're not telling us jack shit and everybody's just freaking out and going, why the hell is Bitcoin down at $88,000? Why is Ethereum down? Why is XRP $2? Oh, maybe they're loading up on the ass end there and nobody's able to see it.
Well, let me just share with you a couple points, then I got to go if you don't mind.
No, 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 that's
Um,
good.
XRP is going to rise when the big players say they're loaded up and they're ready. When BlackRock has their 4 billion coins or 5 billion coins, whatever they want. When
Sure.
JP Morgan has their 3 billion coins or whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
When Bank of New York Mellon has what they want. When Bank of America has what they want. And Fidelity and State Street, they're getting in on this. They've got each a delayed later on. It's coming down the road a little bit. An ETF for spot XRP. When they're ready, XRP will fly.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they'll be in a position to profit, like you. They're not going to let the little plebeians like us profit unless they're ready to profit in a big way. Lastly, let me make a comment about the Trumps. Um, I don't know who the heck Eric Trump is. He doesn't have even a remote resemblance to Donald. Um, Same thing for Junior. No idea who these guys are. I just know what their names are. I believe they're talking Bitcoin and they're buying XRP. They're going to make money on Bitcoin and they're going to make 100 times more on XRP.
Mm-hmm.
If they're buying XRP, are they going to tell you? If they see a huge potential with XRP, are they going to tell you? If they see a small potential in Bitcoin and it might actually serve the government in certain respects, They'll tell you about Bitcoin. So they talked about Bitcoin and it went down. Isn't that interesting? I know XRP is down from what it was, but it seems pretty solid at $2. I think they got a deal. Ripple said we will collude, we will cooperate, collaborate, and collude to enable a $2 purchase of a few billion coins. And I would love to know how that is facilitated. I'd love to know who the whales are. I'd love to know who they work for, who pays their paycheck. I'd love to know what the deals are. And in 2 years, Scott, we might know a little bit more. I'm
Well,
I'm I'm looking at something that just flashed up. It's the auto pen.
yeah.
Um, we might see a lot of casualties, a lot of people dismissed. The auto pen, all the authorization behind the auto pen has been removed, so the legitimacy of whatever it was, a pardon or an appointment or an executive order, I think they're going to be almost all removed.
Judges. Let's go with judges that were auto pen signed in. Oh, we got all kinds of people in high places that were auto penned in.
The Biden judges, and
Yeah.
there's a supreme. I'm looking at her right now. It's Ketanji
Ketanji.
Jackson.
Yep.
She's the most worthless
Idiot.
jurist I've ever encountered.
Oh, that's a
She's
D,
her dissenting opinions read like,
a third grader.
and no, I want to make a cabal apologist. We can't have that. That would mess up the Rockefeller energy complex. Well, what about law, you moron?
Yeah.
What about the Constitution that you have an oath for your seat on the bench?
What about Fauci being all nervous because all their pardons have been rescinded?
Who nervous? I missed the word.
Fauci. Oh,
Oh
Andy
yeah,
Fauci.
I think he's dead and buried.
Well, that's
It,
fine. But,
it's the Fauci name
yeah,
that next is going to be killed, and his
yeah,
wealth that can be confiscated. Those are the issues.
yeah,
It's not the person. They're gone. They're long gone. Um, I want to see Ketanji Jackson removed. And you know
yeah.
what's funny? The Supreme Court might have to sit and rule on that decision.
Yeah.
And Ketanji won't be a part of it. She'll have to recuse herself.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't that be
And
hilarious?
I heard that the justices, they don't like her. Not even the liberals like her.
I mean, who
They
the
think
hell?
she's a moron.
She is a moron. There's no thinking to it. That's a
Okay, this is
DEI
not a black
special.
thing. It's not a black thing.
It's a
Clarence
DEI
Clarence
retard.
Clarence Thomas is a bright son of a gun.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember that fight back in 1980, oh gosh, 86, 87, listening to it on the radio, coming back from work, NPR radio, the battles, the affair they brought up. Anita Hill, I think. Oh boy, that's a name from the past.
Uh,
Woo! Okay, this is going to be exciting because in one swoop, Trump might be able to get rid of 20 judges
yeah.
who are who are blocking the sanctuary cities. Mine is not a political newsletter, but we've got politics and sanctuary cities that are involved in looting and destruction of local economies in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and now I think in Portland and Chicago in a big way. Did you hear that Mayor Moron of Chicago, Brandon, whatever, he just doubled the property taxes in Chicago?
Oh, what a dumbass.
Well, that's a sign of the desperation
Yeah.
because there's a bit of an exodus, and
Well,
and I think some people are just saying, I'm not paying my property tax. If you guys are going to be clowns, I'm not paying.
yeah.
Well, okay. Um, I am still very dedicated to gold and silver. We just have a lot more activity going on in the digital space. I didn't mention this phrase, but we're in the midst of a digital paradigm shift,
hmm
a transformation that I believe is once in a century. Okay, when was the computerization of banks?
The 80s.
1950s?
I was going to,
Oh no, I think the 60s they were using IBM mainframes in the 60s. Um, if you had them in the universities in the 70s, you had them in the banks in the late 60s. Anyway, so that was the last revolution, computerization of the banking industry. We're in the midst right now. The big financial firms are no longer obstructing progress. They're being instructed of the benefits. They're being upgraded. And the obstacles that we've been seeing for years, I think they're going to go away. We're going to have more collaboration. It's going to be easier to move money to and from your crypto coin exchange account to and from your bank. And I don't have much experience with that. Uh,
a
my
lot of people
plan,
don't. A lot of
a
people
lot of
don't.
people, my plan is to borrow against it and not sell it. And you know, when you accept that mindset and plan, you don't care about a move that might be from $8 back to 570. You don't care about a move that might be from 22 back to 19. I don't care. It's going to be 80 before long. Get a grip. Oh, I just saw one of the stupidest little blurbs on Twitter X. The guy said the Bollinger Bands are tightening for XRP. Look for it to drop. The dream might be ending. Well, let me instruct people what Bollinger Bands are. It's a widening or a narrowing of the trading width, the trading band. So how much did it vary? Oh, yesterday was a lot wilder. And 2 days later, it was much narrower. And
Right,
then it got really much more stable. So it didn't go from, it might have moved from 204 to 208 and then back to 204 and then 203. Okay. Narrowing of the Bollinger Band. What does it mean? It means it's about to break out high or low.
right,
It doesn't mean down. It means high or low.
right,
Okay. All right. Just bullshit. But never mentioned in that article or that brief propaganda piece, I think paid for by some Wall Street bank. That's what I think it was. A little propaganda piece, bullshit. They never mentioned the wider, expanding, explosive adoption and usage. So the ones who are using it, they're going to drive up the price because they need to obtain it in order to use it. That's exciting. It's not going to be the little plebeians who drive up the price. It's going to be the big financial firms in order to facilitate its function, in order for them to realize the big savings, in order for them to eliminate errors, to eliminate waiting times. They're going to like it that it takes 10 seconds and not 10 hours. That's a 60-fold. Yeah, it's a 60-fold gain. Now you could make it a lot bigger. You could say 3 seconds instead of, 8 hours. That's like 1,000-fold or more. Okay. The big banks are now participants. And I just heard that JP Morgan is charging money now. I think I said it before, to use Plaid in movements to and from a coin exchange account with Coinbase. So they're going to be making deals. I don't mind a small fee. That's a service. Make a service, provide it, you get paid. All right, Scott, got to go. Time to decompress a bit more. These are very hectic times, and I appeal to people to sign up for the newsletter. It's golden-jackass.com. If you want to help me out, because I'm being persecuted, and I'm not saying this like a jerk, making it up. I've got a sequence of 30 events the last several years that are bizarre, very hard to explain, and all of them are costly. I believe I've been targeted by dark forces. I don't say that loosely. I don't say that with any hesitation. I don't say that with any doubt in my mind. So my stock and trade bread and butter is the newsletter. I really enjoy writing it. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy helping folks to realize the next big wave. And I'm available for consults. I got a couple lined up next week. I've done about 800 of them so far. This will be the end of year number 6. It was pretty much January of 2020. It was really December of 19, but okay, December 19 to December now, that's 6 years. Um, 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 8 is a two-way avenue where I benefit from something that is discussed. Um, so sign up for the newsletter, sign up for a consult call, make a donation, and if you're wealthy and want to support my mission for truth, liberty, and profit, make a large donation with the sponsor button. I had one a few days ago and it just made my day. I had a nice donation yesterday. It just made my day. Um, I actually I go onto my knees and I thank the Lord Jesus Christ. I really do. That's St. Michael, the Archangel in blue. Yep. And that's Jesus in brown, orange. Without their support, I would not be here. They lift me up. I pray for more protection, but I'm very grateful for all the lifting that I have been given by people like the listeners. I appreciate small and medium sized donations. It's done within the same payment system. So thanks for having me on, Scott. And these are exciting times. I've said it a few times now. This is very exciting. We are in revolutionary times. And I believe Donald Trump is doing many, many things that will become more apparent in the coming months toward a removal of cabal power and an institution of greater liberties. Um, Let me just say that he's got, at times and in certain respects, he's got his hands tied. So don't lose heart in that. I'll give you one example. No Pfizer prosecutions,
Yeah.
nothing, but just wait, just wait.
Well, isn't it something that, they were saying that January 1st, the government shuts down again. All they did was kick the can down the road. We get to
Could
go
be.
through this whole bullshit all over again in 60 days almost, where it shut. It was 40 something days. I forget exactly now. But still, look at the shakeup that caused. Now, they ain't even mentioning nothing about it. But January 1st, we get to hear this and they shut it down again. Oh, shit.
Just remember the term continuing resolution.
Yes.
That's not permanent. That's not
Right.
a new financial budget bill. It is a patch job. It
Hmm.
is a it is a small bridge to get us to tomorrow.
And
And we're
tomorrow's
running
coming.
out of tomorrows.
I know. And tomorrow's coming, Jan 1st. We're 3 weeks out. Merry Christmas.
All right, Scott, this is so much stimulus.
Uh-huh.
I don't mean fiscal stimulus. I mean intellectual stimulus.
Yes.
I haven't had to work this hard to resolve issues and figure stuff out in years. Before, like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, it was, well, when this happens, when that happens, and when this happens, gold and silver are going to bust out.
Right.
They all happened. They all happened. Now
Yep.
what? Now it's how high.
Right.
Now it's what else is going to go into crisis mode. So we laid out a few, and I appreciate the time. And thanks for everything, Scott. I value you as a friend and a business, not a business partner, just a colleague. Colleague.
Yeah. Oh, you're definitely my colleague and a mentor to boot. So you get all the accolades on that one. But I really appreciate you coming on and everybody out there. Like I say, if you want to help Jim out, go to his website, golden-jackass.com, and you could subscribe to the newsletter or get a conference or
Consult.
consult call or just make a donation. So either one of the three, by all means help Jim out because he is always ready to get some extra help.
I'm in a war zone, and if wounds financially were more visible, you'd see bloody bandages all over my body.
Oh yeah, you'd be beat the hell up.
I'm gonna survive. I'm gonna overcome. I will get to the other side, and it will be with the Lord God's help.
Absolutely.
I must have honestly, I must have more faith because when you get the shit kicked out of you several times, you start losing a little faith.
Hmm.
But I get faith from consult calls. Um, Many of them are Christians,
Yeah,
and you know, I am knocking at the door, hoping that there are answers to my knock. Okay, I need some help, and I'm in a constant battle zone, and I'm telling you, it's taking a toll. I got lives on the line. I have lives on the line. I described it to Scott before we went on in recording. All right,
yeah.
thanks for having me on.
All right.
Golden-jackass.com. Thanks a bunch.
All right. Everybody out there, stay frosty.
Okay.
Bye.